Welcome to MetroSTL. I'm your host, Antonio French. We start today with a look at two prosecutors representing St. Louis City and St. Louis County. Both were elected in the aftermath of the 2014 unrest following the killing of teenager Michael Brown by Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson. Both came into office with a mandate to reform a broken system, and both have faced strong pushback and opposition from a system that has proven difficult to change. Here's our story from reporter George Sales.
There are plenty of reasons behind what erupted in Ferguson 5 years ago. Among them, if you believe the critics, is the way the legal system operates.
What we are calling for justice to be achieved.
In the 5 years since the unrest, voters have spoken on that topic, electing a pair of self-proclaimed reformers, Kim Gardner in the city, Wesley in St. Louis County, to the top prosecutors' positions.
People are starting to understand when we look at our incarceration rates being the highest in the world, when we see that this supposed law and order approach has only increased violent crimes and serious crimes across the country, I think people are starting to get it.
But entry into office has not been easy. Both have received pushback since taking charge. Gardner's situation has been the most visible. After her office charged disgraced Missouri Governor Eric Greitens with invasion of privacy in connection with the sex scandal that led to his resignation, one of her investigators was charged by a special prosecutor with perjury and tampering with evidence in the case. The indictment against him also went after Gardner, but she was never charged with anything. She spoke about it on MetroSTL.com's JACO report.
Well, I can't speak to what, the internal thinking of a special prosecutor, but I do know in terms of how an indictment is supposed to be formed, and that causes concerns and ethical concerns as a prosecutor, and understanding that we are guided by certain guidelines and rules, and regardless of individual thoughts or opinions of personal nature, those are not put in an indictment because that is improper and it's not fair.
Gardner has openly said this is part of a pushback effort against her aim to reform the system.
And it's about cronyism and status quo, and when you are a reform-minded prosecutor, that you're about changing systems, you're going to have pushback, but pushback in ways that you would never expect. And I think that it's bigger than just Kim Gardner. It's about silencing the people of the city of St. Louis who elected me to make reforms that are needed in a system that has been broken, that has not worked, that needs to be changed.
Bell's challenges have been different but also pronounced. As he was taking office, his prosecutors unionized, joining the often controversial St. Louis Police Officers Association.
As prosecutors, we are struggling nationwide to disassociate ourselves with the notion that we are too interdependent with law enforcement, and this sets us back.
Rather than answering direct questions about pushback, Bell segued into the changes he's trying to make, including the doing away with cash bail and providing programs instead of jail time for low-level offenders.
Instead of starting that cycle of incarceration, we're treating the underlying root cause. Now, I want to make sure it's clear. We are not talking about serious and violent offenders. They have to be held accountable. We understand that, and we're continuing to do that. What we're not going to do is to continue to incarcerate the nonviolent and low-level offenders who pose no threat to our community, but instead we want to give them the treatment that they need, and that brings crime rates down. That saves taxpayer dollars, and it helps people.
Both have given ammunition to critics. Bell, with his early firing of 3 top prosecutors and his slew of parking tickets in his county-provided car. Gardner, in addition to what happened with Greitens, saw more than 25% of her prosecutors leave the office in her first 6 months, according to a St. Louis Post-Dispatch account.
I fight every day because it's not about me.
But both insist they will push forward, even if others do push back. Gardner says her current staff tells the story of what's ahead.
They're doing their job. They're holding violent individuals accountable, but at the same time, we're reforming a system that needs to be reformed so we can make our city safer.
George Sells, MetroSTL.com.
Joining me now is George Sales. George, thanks for your report.
Yeah.
So both Gardner and Bell were elected in the aftermath of Ferguson in 2014. Both call themselves reformers. Have you seen differences, though, in their approach to the jobs?
Well, their approach to reacting to the pushback question, there's no question about that. I think that Wesley Bell will answer a question, he'll at least acknowledge it, but he's very quick to want to move on. He wants to change the subject and talk about what he's trying to do. Kim Gardner, you ask her about pushback, she talks about pushback. You heard her in this report talking about cronyism and that sort of thing. And I don't know what the difference is. Maybe it's her lengthier background in politics. Maybe she's more of a campaigner than he is, but she definitely grabs onto that issue.
Obviously, her taking on the governor, especially just getting into office her first year, that's a big case for her, and it's still lingering on. She still has a lot of issues related to that case. There was some talk about her possibly being indicted herself in that whole thing. That didn't happen.
Never happened. The grand jury was dismissed, or excused, I should say. The indictment against her deputy there discussed her a lot, but then did not go, they never went forward with an indictment against her. There are some out there. I was actually speaking with the head of the St. Louis Police Officers Association today on a different story, and his group still wants to see action on that front, but it appears unlikely at this point it's going to happen because they had plenty of time to come back with an indictment if they wanted to.
Kim Gardner is once again facing pushback, this time as she seeks to free a man from jail she says was wrongly convicted by one of her predecessors. Here she is speaking last week.
The issue is the prosecutor's duty to correct a case where there's clear and convincing evidence that this man is innocent. You know, we're looking at how prosecutors have a duty. We swear to an oath, and it's important. You know, this man lost 25 years of his life. We all lost. We have victims who lost. We let everyone down. And that's what it's about. It's about justice and trust in a system of fairness for all. We just want to make sure we have a mechanism when a prosecutor says we believe by the evidence that this person should be exonerated. Let's do the right thing.
George, it's rare for a prosecutor to try to free someone from jail, but it's also rare for a judge to say that an elected prosecutor is not the one that should be representing the state. So what's going on in this case?
A lot to unpack here. As far as the rare for a prosecutor to do that, absolutely. And this is certainly part of her reform campaign that she got into office on, the fact that she said she was going to be reviewing cases, and this is one of the ones that the people in the building have reviewed. Now, it should be pointed out that any prosecutor will tell you that it is their duty not to seek conviction, but to seek justice. And by the definition of what the job is supposed to be, that's exactly what they're doing here in trying to go forward with this. The thing with the judge is kind of strange. Basically, a Boone County judge has said that Kim Gardner cannot represent the state in this matter if they go forth with a new trial because there is a conflict of interest. The conflict of interest being the St. Louis Circuit Attorney's Office convicted Lamar Johnson, therefore it would be a conflict of interest for them to then represent the state in going back on this thing, essentially. That would make sense if he had been convicted under Kim Gardner. It doesn't make a lot of sense considering that when he was convicted, Kim Gardner, 1994, how old is Kim? Yeah. Grade school? It's been a while. So that's a little strange, and going back to the pushback conversation we were having, this one's hard to identify because, pushback is in the eye of the beholder. Some people might say this is pushback. Some might just say it's a flaky judge. And you get a lot of those too in these kinds of cases, so it's really hard to tell.
So where does the case stand?
At this point, they are now waiting to get a special prosecutor involved, and it's sort of in limbo right now until they go through some of the minutia, basically, that's involved in the courts. But it is looking at this point like Lamar Johnson will be exonerated. And if it's any commentary on convictions around the country, if you Google Lamar Johnson wrongful murder conviction, you'll find two. This one and a case in Baltimore from 2004.
Sign of the times. Thank you. Thanks, George. Now we take a look at a St. Louis icon. Crown Candy Kitchen has been delivering smiles on the corner of 14th Street and St. Louis Avenue in the neighborhood of Old North St. Louis for the past 106 years. And the business doesn't plan on stopping anytime soon. Here's our story from Bria Grimion.
It isn't just a restaurant or an ice cream shop. In fact, it isn't a candy factory either. It's all three combined into one. On top of all that, it's an institution. Crown Candy Kitchen has operated in Old North St. Louis for the past 106 years, and it doesn't plan on leaving anytime soon.
I love this area, and I plan on being here for the rest of my life. And my father always said, this is where we belong. This is our home. We're part of this community, and this community is part of us. People have always asked us, you should move, or you should open a second location, or you should do this or that. But, it just kind of has stuck with me that more so now today than any other time, I think, that, that it's important for us to be here, to be part of this community, and to show people that, the city, especially North City, there are good things here.
It's a family business that has been passed down through 4 generations.
My grandfather opened this business on this corner 106 years ago, and my father took it over in 1951, and he ran it until the early 90s when my brothers and I took it over. I think my grandfather would absolutely be shocked at how much this business has evolved from the day he opened it. Well, I've got 3, maybe 4 generations of customers coming through these doors now. You think about it, for as long as we've been here, we've got grandparents, we've got great-grandparents, we've got, the parents and their kids, and everybody comes back down here because a lot of people in St. Louis have their roots in North St. Louis City, and we're still here, so it's something they can kind of still, see and experience and be part of and say, this is where I used to come when I was 5 years old.
No matter who you ask in the area, they seem to tell the same story. Crown Candy Kitchen is a pillar of strength in Old North St. Louis.
Now that I live here and work here, it is a great anchor for us to, have it. Keeps it that community feel, and as long as they're there, bringing in, cooking good food and bringing that uniqueness to the area.
It's something I think any community would be lucky to have.
Good food, family, and fun. That's what it's all about.
I found out about Crown Candy Kitchen on the Travel Channel, and yeah, now we come here once a year, and we keep coming back since the food's really good, and they have this BLT with like a full pound of bacon on it, which is what I always get.
Crown Candy's that jewel in the crown.
We're part of St. Louis, and St. Louis is what we love, and that's why we'll always be in St. Louis.
Bria Grimion, MetroSTL.com.
Joining me now is Bria Grimion from the NorthSider. So, Crown Candy Kitchen, been there forever. It's an institution. So why do they stay?
According to Andy, they stay because that is his home. He says he's not moving. He's very adamant that he wants to be in North St. Louis, and so he is not moving.
Yeah, they've been around there through ups and downs in that neighborhood. There's been a lot of redevelopment in the Old North neighborhood in the last 15 years, but there was a period where Crown Candy was about the only show down there, but yet people still came. Are people still coming daily?
Daily, yes, sir. Andy told me that he serves anywhere between 800 to 1,000 people per day, and so he says that mainly it's a lunchtime rush. A lot of people are wary that they may not get in and get out in a good amount of time, but he's adamant that once the kids go back to school, you can get in and get out and get served.
So business is still pretty good?
Business is booming, yes,
Not
sir.
closing anytime soon?
Not anytime soon.
Great. Our final story will affect thousands of people throughout St. Louis as hundreds of bus stops are being removed across the city, making public transit more difficult for many, including seniors. Here's our story from reporter Vance Brinkley.
For many residents who use Metro Transit in the city, things are about to change in a big way, and many aren't happy about it. Metro says that they are removing 455 bus stops beginning July 15th. That's nearly 10% of the region's bus stops on the chopping block.
The 450 number is the result of the fact that we've been able to actually do a comprehensive audit of all of the stops in our whole systems.
Once the sign crews travel to each neighborhood and physically remove the stops, bus drivers will no longer pick anyone up from that location.
On the Missouri side, there are over 5,000 stops today. So that's a lot for the area that we cover. And we're able to utilize a new technology, basically a geographic information systems tool that's allowed us to evaluate these stops. And through that process, it has identified this larger number of stops that are spaced simply too close together for efficient travel.
The news that Metro is slashing stops is receiving plenty of backlash. Many riders are unhappy. A group of senior citizens from the Heritage House rallied to save their bus stop on Olive Street after they found a warning sign across the street from their building.
This is a senior building where a lot of people here use walkers and canes, and some using these, the wheelchairs, those little walker chairs that they use. And so for them to have to walk a great distance, like now it's summertime, but wintertime it gets dark early. So I think it affects them. And we really don't want to see that happen.
Although the Heritage Houses stop was saved, most others will not be. Residents who want to keep their bus stops can still contact the Bi-State Development through text, email, or phone call.
The removal and the allowance for our operators to not stop quite as frequently as they do will be an improvement for our vehicles and the condition of them. And also, it's for our bus operators as well. I mean, these folks have tough jobs. They're in the seat for hours at a time, and they do wonderfully, but it will help them to kind of be more responsive to their customers if they're not having to brake every block.
But with the clock ticking on the stop closures, most will just need to get ready to adapt. Change is coming, so in some places, the bus is not. Vance Brinkley, MetroSTL.com.
Joining me now is Vance Brinkley.
Blessed to be here.
Hey, Vance, thanks for joining us. So originally, how many bus stops were supposed to be shut down?
It was supposed to be 450 bus stops. The STL Metro actually saved 80 due to the negative criticism that they received from residents as well as local businesses.
So you had a lot of people organizing, like those folks at Heritage House,
Yes.
to try to save their bus stops.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
so
sir.
they were able to save about 80 of them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
They're still removing about 6 main bus routes, but at the same time, they're still saving most of their routes. And in some cases, they're actually implementing more. So instead of people having about 30-minute trips, they have more like 15-minute trips.
Okay. How many have they shut down so far, and are they still shutting more down?
So far, they have shut down about 380. They are implementing new strategies September 30th, but outside of that, mainly 380 bus stops have either been relocated or eliminated completely.
Is it too late for people to still contact Metro to find out if they can save their bus stop?
No, sir. They can still contact by email and also by phone number as well. They're very open, and just like the Heritage House, they're definitely open for criticism and conversations about bus stops being opened or closed.
All right, Brian. Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Well, that's our show for today. Thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like and share our videos on Facebook. And check MetroSTL.com every day for news stories and videos. Until next time, I'm Antonio French. See you soon.